apropos of a lot of things in our lives these days. And they have it's a very well-designed survey. I heard the presentation the other day. Scott was there as well. But the key thing is to get high levels of participation across town, like a big percentage of the population. So they're in the phase now of spreading the word and encouraging people to spread the word and participate. So, Meg, please tell us about it.
I'm going to stand behind here just because it has the table, but let me know if the extra 2 feet would help. Hi everyone, thank you so much for...
Maybe stick that thing down, just so it's not in your face.
Good?
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much for having me, everyone. I usually come to one Rotary meeting a year to introduce the Dorico Scholarship Award recipient. And so this is the first year that I've had the privilege of being at two of these meetings, and I always enjoy the main speaker. It's such a gift to come. So hopefully I enjoy this main speaker today. I am Meg Stoffin. I'm the program officer at the New Canaan Community Foundation, but today I'm actually here as a representative of the New Canaan Behavioral Health Alliance. The Alliance is actually tri-chaired by the Community Foundation, the Town of New Canaan, and Silver Hill Hospital. And it is comprised of over 30 organizations that exist. Oh, are we okay? that exist across Fairfield County, across the state, but do work actively in New Canaan. Lots of New Canaan-based organizations that do work in and around the issue of behavioral health. And I'm here today to talk about the Community Health and Wellbeing Survey that is being administered by the New Canaan Behavioral Health Alliance. So before I get into the details of the actual survey, I want to address kind of the two biggest questions, which is why administer a survey and why do so now? And to address why, surveying communities like we intend to do has become increasingly typical for local communities in this area. To my knowledge, we are one of the only communities in Lower Fairfield County who doesn't regularly administer surveys to their general population, to their youth, and use those survey results to inform what they're doing, how they're funding their programming, and how they are able to apply for additional funds. Collecting survey data helps with resource allocation, meaning that we can come back to our government, we can go to the New Canaan Community Foundation and say, look at exactly what the needs look like in this community. And it also helps track progress over time. Like I said, we have 30 organizations locally who are doing work in this space, and it would be really great if they knew how well their programming is working, right? The third thing I wrote down is that it reduces stigma. Calling it a behavioral health or a community-wide health survey really does help people look down at the paper and know that they're not the only ones who might be going through something. And finally, it can bring new resources to town. Grant funds are aplenty for behavioral health work right now, and a lot of our neighboring towns, including Greenwich, including Darien, have multi-year grants up to $500,000 over 5 years. New Canaan doesn't have access to those grants because we don't have the data that we need to even apply for them. So these are funds that, from our view, are just kind of sitting there waiting to be tapped to use and put towards additional behavioral health work in town. And to address the question of why now, there are a lot of reasons that this kind of survey is timely. You've all likely seen reports on the teen mental health crisis. The Surgeon General just put on an advisory notice about parental stress, right? There's a lot of news coming up in this general space. But as we've mentioned today, we really can't have this conversation right now without acknowledging the incredible loss that New Canaan is experiencing right now. So our belief is strong that this kind of work is so incredibly critical to our town. And so I'm privileged to be here today speaking with you all about it. One other note, I'm sorry, I'm working off of somebody else's notes. But one other note that I did want to mention is that this survey is different from others. We all have survey fatigue. There are a million surveys out there. So we've seen the POCD survey that was around last year. The New Vance Health just administered a survey about Norwalk Hospital. But this survey is really different because it is both New Canaan specific and it is holistic. It's going to survey not only youth, but also adults. It's not just talking about health. It's not just talking about behavioral health, but it's talking about wellness in general. How connected are you to the community? Do you feel like you have people to talk to? Do you feel safe when you're walking down the street? All of that good stuff. So now let's talk actually about the survey. I'm going to give an overview of like the methodology and get into all of that good stuff. And 30 minutes is not a lot of time, so if you do have a question, I'm going to kind of try to make this a shortened version. Just go ahead and let me know. So we are working with a consultant named Nina Chanana. She has been working in survey design and administration for 17 years, including working with many organizations and municipalities that are our neighbors. So she has a really, really good idea of what those surveys have looked like, what's worked, what's not worked. So she's been a fantastic guide through this whole process. An overview of this survey is that it allows New Canaan leaders to make data-driven and informed decisions instead of only relying on historical funding decisions. The need assessment will identify and evaluate behavioral health needs and resources around town. And the real objective of the survey is to inform planning, resource allocation, and implementation of services, policies, and programs to effectively address identified needs. This survey will be administered in 2 different phases. The first phase, which is the part that we're involved in right now, is focusing on the adults in our community, those 18 years and older. So this work, like I mentioned, it is the project of the Behavioral Health Alliance at large, a small subset of that group, including organizations we all know and love, like New Canaan Cares, Silver Hill, Waveney Life Care. We've been meeting pretty regularly every week throughout the summer to kind of get this survey up and running. We identified the consultant, we developed the survey, we sent it around so that the different people in different stages of life could test it out, tell us if there's anything that's missing, working on the marketing plans. And so currently, the phase that we're in is getting community input and spreading the word about it. For those of you, I know at least 2 of you attended the engagement sessions that happened earlier this week, where our consultant was giving this presentation. And this is all kind of in the lead up to the month of October when the survey will actually be available. So we are dubbing it Survey Month. You will see our posters around town. And then after the survey has closed, and hopefully we get as many New Canaanites as possible to fill it out and tell us about their experiences, our consultant Nina will spend November and December cleaning that data, analyzing it, kind of coming up with all of the themes that we could possibly get, and then we will be in a place hopefully by January to present our findings to the public. Okay. And then the second phase of this survey is going to be focusing on our youth. We think that this stage will involve a ton of qualitative data collection in addition to quantitative, which this survey is going to be primarily quantitative. And it might include focus groups, but all of that is kind of TBD right now. That's going to be a project for the spring. So now I'm going to talk about the methodology a little bit. So the methodology, the first thing we thought about was the actual design of the survey. We defined objectives, the target population, which is the whole town over the age of 18, the sampling method, and the mode of the survey. The mode is going to be primarily digital. Every poster you see around town, everything you'll see in a newsletter on social media will be linked to the survey. But we have designated in-person sites throughout the town that we will advertise do have paper copies to fill out. So if you are a senior, if you want some assistance of a trained volunteer, if for whatever reason you prefer a paper copy, we'll make sure that that's available to you. We thought about the questionnaire development, which is really focusing on what type of topics we want to cover, which I'll get into in detail in the next 3 slides. We spent a lot of time talking about the wording of the questions and their ordering. That is something that was so nice to have a consultant there for who knows this space, because how the questions are ordered really kind of manages how you are thinking about it as a survey taker. And I had one more thought. I lost it. And then we piloted the survey. We sent it around to different, all kinds of different people, from our friends to, I sent it around to some young adults who are over the age of 18, but not, they're at college. That's the input that we want as well, from literally anybody that we can find over the age of 18 in town. The sampling and distribution, we determined the sample size and the channels through which the survey will be distributed. I have a bunch of notes about on the statistical side, we're using non-probability sampling, and if anybody's more interested in that, we do have Nina's contact information at the end of this slide, and she's welcome to talk statistics with you all day, every day. The data collection, we established a period of data collection, which will be the month of October, and we are ensuring data security during this phase. The analysis, Nina will perform the data analysis once all of the survey responses are in. She will go through, clean the data, analyze it, and derive the meaningful insights. And then after that, she will report back. She'll interpret the data and provide conclusions and recommendations based on the analysis. I wish it was highlighted and bolded and in red, but the number one consideration that we went into this survey with was anonymity. We want to make sure that the identity of all of our respondents and everything is protected. So not only do we not ask for personalized information like your name and address or what have you, we also don't have any fill-in-the-box questions, because people have a tendency to identify themselves through those questions. And we are administering the survey via SurveyMonkey. That's what all the links will track back to. And we've removed the little security feature so we don't get anybody's IP address as well. So it is totally and completely anonymous.
Excuse me, how do you know if somebody doesn't fill it out multiple times?
So that was a question that I think everybody has had for Nina, and Nina goes, no one fills out a survey multiple times, right?
Okay.
I remember Tucker, during the community engagement session, she was like, people with parking, man, like, I think they fill it out multiple times. And this is just, I think, not that type of survey, right? It's data collection, but the tangible benefit coming out is services produced by a variety of organizations rather than advocating for their parking, yeah, their personal parking agenda, yeah. Okay, so the topics. This survey is 29 questions, plus 8 additional questions for individuals who identify themselves as having a child in the household. It takes 10 minutes or less to fill out. That was, we weren't really thinking about the number of questions when we were forming the survey, and nobody wants to sit down for 35 minutes and fill out information about themselves. We were really thinking through the framework of time, right? We don't want this to be something that anybody has to plan around. So 29 questions for 18-year-olds and older, the additional 8 questions for individuals who have children living in their homes with them, and I will get to those questions a little bit later. The topics that we cover, we do ask about demographics, so residency is on this list because we are opening up the survey to the entire town of New Canaan. But on top of that, we do want parents of students who go to school in New Canaan also to be filling out this survey. Those children who go to St. Luke's, who go to country schools, they're a part of our community as well, and so we want to make sure that we have their input as well. Gender, age, race, ethnicity, age of children, community involvement. We're going to be asking about how connected you are to the community. Do you go to church? Do you volunteer regularly? Do you have those community connections so that if something comes up, you have a group of people that you feel comfortable going back to? We are asking about knowledge and utilization of community-based supports. So it's a question of how well do you know the organizations who are already in town, already doing great work, and have you ever used their services, right? I think our thought is that if we get back this data that says people are really in need of X, Y, and Z, and that's exactly what an organization like New Canaan Cares provides, then we have some work to do, right? We have our marching orders. Knowledge of where to go for help around mental health and substance use issues, how information on health and well-being resources is received. So do you hear about a panel that's going on about diabetes, right? Do you hear about that from New Canaan moms? Do you hear about it because it's in the New Canaanite, right? How are you getting your news so that if there's something that these organizations want to get out there, they know? Barriers to physical health care and mental health services. Are those services becoming too expensive for you? Do you have trouble transporting yourself there? Are there any barriers to accessing the care that you need? And safety, do you feel safe in your home? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Do you feel safe walking down the street? I bet you didn't think there was another slide. Additional topics. Level of concern around issues related to well-being and behavioral health in general. This is an interesting question because it'll ask you, are you concerned about gambling? Are you concerned about substance use? Are you concerned about discrimination, right? All of those types of topics. And it'll ask you, are you concerned about those things for yourself? Are you concerned about them for the broader community? Are you concerned about them for our youth? So we're kind of segmenting out these different traits of the population to see if we get a resounding, yes, we're concerned about this thing in this broader sense. Life satisfaction, that is, this is standard in a number of surveys that are tracking behavioral health. It is really just are you satisfied, right? In the last 2 weeks, in the last 6 months, do you feel satisfied? Financial stability and insecurities. This is asking a lot more about those human services and critical needs around town. Have you had trouble putting food on the table? Have you had trouble affording your rent, right? We want to make sure that if there are trends in that space, we know where to find the people who need this. Yes?
Will there be a question on health, not mental health anxiety, but
Yep.
a lot of times people are anxious, depressed, because they've got a health problem or a family member does. And so, is there gonna be something on that?
Yes, there are questions on the survey that relate to physical health in addition to mental health. And our hope is that with all of the other information we're collecting, we can see if there's a strong connection between, you know, if somebody has a chronic illness and also if they are experiencing mental health issues, drawing those strings together. We are going to ask if anyone has experienced discrimination and attitudes and perceptions regarding substance use and prevention. So this not only includes knowledge on, you know, actual proper prescription disposal and anything particular about the substances themselves, but it also asks, you know, parents, hey, are you aware of this law that precludes you from providing alcohols to minors and that kind of stuff. And then, as I mentioned, there is a specific an additional 8 questions. We have a question early on in the survey that asks, do you have children at home with you? And if the answer is yes, parents will get these additional questions. It'll ask for the age of their child. We've kind of grouped the ages by what phase of life they're in. So are they going to be in elementary school or middle school or high school or pre-K? We ask about level of concern for your child around issues related to well-being and behavioral health. They're all listed there. We ask whether your child has a trusted adult that you think they can go to if they have a problem that isn't you. We ask about your knowledge of where to go around mental health and substance use issues in the first part, and now we ask about your child's knowledge, right? Do you think that they know where to go to? We ask about your child's mental health and your family norms, right? How do you monitor your children? How do you talk about alcohol and drug use in front of your children, etc. And relatedly, we also talk about clear family rules. So is there absolutely no sports gambling in this house, right? Do you monitor their social media and all that good stuff? So those are all the topics. I know that's kind of the meat and potatoes of this survey discussion. So I'm sure I'll be flipping back and forth from there. But aside from that, I put 2 sets of contact information up here. The first is Nina's. Like I mentioned, she's the expert that's guiding us through this process. She's the one that helped us formulate the survey, say here's how you need to frame these questions so that you can eventually get this grant money, or so that you can align with best practices or whatever. So she's a fantastic resource if you have any specific questions, and also my contact information, because I'm also happy to help. That's the end of the presentation, but we have never not had questions after this, so I figured that would be the bulk of the rest of the time. Yes?
Can I start it off? First of all, thanks, Megan, for great presentation. You did just as well as me. So behavioral health. I've been playing with that term in my mind. How would you define that? How would we want to understand that as opposed to physical, spiritual, mental, whatever other kind of health?
Behavioral health is a combination. It's actually, the way I see it, is a kind of a catch-all term that includes some of the things that you already mentioned. So it's inclusive of things like mental health, right? Anxiety, depression, all of those things. But it also includes, if you're thinking about a young student, right? Like a first, second grader who's acting out in school, that then becomes a behavioral health issue, even if we don't necessarily have a diagnosis assigned to it, right? So it's this kind of broader term that includes those things, substance abuse, and all of those topics. Yep.
And then the follow-up was, I also coin dropped from the other presentation that there's a $500,000 grant out there that we're looking at. Who's going to get that money? Is that the town or the community fund? Who will manage that?
Yeah, that is we need this data to then even figure out what we want to be applying for, what our community needs that those funds could be good for. And I think depending on that, we would say, great, then this is the right seeming mechanism for this grant, right? I think the thing that I find most meaningful about this project is that we haven't had a community-wide survey like this in about 20 years, right? We don't know what's going on. We have an idea, right? We all live in town. I mean, I don't, but you guys all live in town. We all have our networks, and we have an idea, right? We see things happen, and we really feel like we know what's going on. But a survey like this that we can put numbers behind can really tell us what's going on. And for the nonprofits who are dedicated to providing those services and meeting the needs of the community, it's one thing to get to understand the needs through this like anecdotal and passing from person to person type of evidence, and one thing to have something like this that you can point to and produce results with.
The survey as you described, it seems just very well brought out with many points of detail. But the contrast with the children's side, the under 18, was, for me, was striking. Seems like that is a new effort and it doesn't have much behind it yet.
Well, it is phase 2, and we're in phase 1, but yes, you're correct. I think that, like I mentioned, this is the community's first time being surveyed in about 20 years, and this community is very protective over our children, and we understand that. When we do the youth survey, we really want to be mindful of how the community will respond. So part of the strategy in doing the adult survey first is that, number one, we can get a little bit of that data, right? By asking our parents what they think is going on, we might be able to say, okay, here's what we think might be happening with our youth, and then we can formulate the questions based on that feedback. But the other thing is, we want to do this and we want to do it really well, so that by the time we get to surveying our youth, whether that be in a similar survey like what we're outlining right now, or just be kind of combined, do focus groups of youth throughout the community, we want to have the community's buy-in, and we know that we're not going to necessarily get that by thrusting the children into their survey right away. So you're right, we don't have a strong plan for that yet, but that's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
I'm going to say something that I forgive anybody. Forgive me if I offend or upset anybody, but I'm going to say one thing. I have a 16-year-old son, and I mentioned before that I'm the child who passed last weekend. When I went to my 16-year-old son and I said, "Do you remember Elliot?" And my son looked at me, and very well, and I'm sorry for saying this, he looked at me and he said, "What happened? Did he kill himself?" That's what he said to me. I almost fell over. I had no prompting, I didn't prompt him or anything, and I said, no, I said, well, this was Sunday morning, because we got the email from Dr. Lutzy on Sunday morning that this happened, Saturday night. I told my son, he had that response, and I said, my first thought was accident, because that's what I'm thinking. I didn't think anything else. He went right there, and I said, no, I said, well, he died. I said, I don't know what happened, nothing's been released, but why did you say that? And he said, because he's in sports. He said, and they all have mental health problems.
I think
So-
a lot of people would say that,
So-
would say they
So,
kill themselves.
so what I want to say
Sports,
to
yeah.
you with this survey is please, 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 look at the sports.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is so treacherous, and these kids are not gonna, they're not gonna say anything unless you ask them, and maybe then you might not get anywhere.
Yeah.
My son's not in sports, but I can tell you that they look at that and they're just, I've heard other things, but I'm no expert, but it broke my heart.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and it's really good information to have, right? Particularly because we don't know what that youth survey is gonna look like, and we know the youth survey is the one that we're like on the edge of our seat, right? It's community-wide, we care about everybody in our community, but the youth is this big, great question mark to us, because, you know, there are question marks to their parents even, right? So that's really wonderful guidance, because if we end up doing a focus group on that, we can make sure, right? We can make sure to be inclusive of those communities. Yes.
What do you consider a success rate in terms of the responses?
So we are aiming for 100% participation, of course. And I don't have the number in front of me, but it is actually lower than you would think to meet a statistically significant percentage of the population. So where I think the number's somewhere in the mid 1000s, like 1500, but the truth is that if we just go to that number, we're gonna be working our normal networks, right? We're gonna be going to the Rotary Club who we love, or we're gonna be sending out the listserv, the Community Foundation will send to theirs, Silver Hills to theirs, or whatever. And we're trying to get to everybody, because the survey is only as good as it is, as right as it's going to make it. Yeah.
I just have one challenge, and I know you
Sure.
guys think of this, and all of us here are kind of involved in town.
Yes.
There's a lot of different
Oh, are you?
ways to live in New Canaan, right? And I think one of your second question is how involved are you in town? There's an enormous subset of people here, you know, and I was probably that way before I got involved in town. You used to work, you deal with stuff. We have no clue about
Yeah.
folks, and those are the ones, I don't know how, it's hard to figure out what's a statistically representative sample, because if it's 1,500 people
Right.
from all of us and our friends,
Right, it's
there's
not
that whole group
representative.
that communicates.
Yeah, those are the people who are already involved and have a community attachment and everything
Yeah,
else.
so I
Correct.
that's
So-
really gonna be hard to get them.
Absolutely, so the marketing aspect is
The
something we're
schools,
focusing on a
yeah.
lot right now. We're leading on everybody in the behavioral health line, so 30 organizations to reach out to everybody that they know. We are engaging adult advocates, so faces that you would recognize throughout town, to make videos and represent the survey and just say, please fill this out. We have signs that are going up on South and Farm, at the train station, little posters to go up in all of the shops. We're really trying to reach those people, because we have faith that our networks will respond, but that's the framework that
I
we're
gotta tell you,
actually.
might wanna get someone to, honest to God, ride the train.
Yeah.
Say, hey, would you mind, I know this is top of mind people, would you mind?
Is that a volunteer?
No,
Yeah, I understand.
some other Rotary.
Someone else,
do that.
yeah.
QR code, posters
QR.
at the train station, that
Yep.
kind of stuff, yeah.
All of it, yeah.
Really accessible.
And then, like I mentioned before, right, I think part of that population that we might not get naturally are our seniors, are our people who aren't always out and about in town. So we will try, as much as we're publicizing things like the link and things like our partner organizations, we are going to publicize, here's where you can get a physical, in-person copy and just fill out the survey.
Yeah.
Yeah, the library.
I hope not over time.
No, but, this is a really important topic, and I'm gonna do what I can to help word get out and encourage people to respond. I think everybody here probably feels the same way, so if there's anything we can do in the future too, or in the next few weeks, because that's going to count, let us
Absolutely.
know.
Well, it'll be released on October 1st. It'll be available through the end of the month, and we will, we're already in touch with Amy, so we thank
Okay.
you, the Rotary Club, for being a partner in all of this. Yeah.
Thank you.